On to an episode of Out the Old-Timers comic book show. Look at me, I'm getting myself all mixed up. I'm confabulated. It's the Christmas season. What can I say? Stuart on hand to correct me, as always, will be the Professor. Ta-da! Hey, welcome back, Professor. And of course, it wouldn't be Christmas without a Grinch. It's the 13th Crusader. Sorry, man, I couldn't resist that one. Could not resist it. I apologize. Profusely.
It's okay.
It's all right. That's cool. So, the topic for today, this was Bud's topic, and I thought it was an absolute stellar topic, an absolute peach of a pick. Bud, would you like to tell everyone what our topic is?
Well, I know we had been talking about, it's December, it's Christmas season, and I said, hey, what if we do books that we would like to give out as gifts for Christmas?
There you go. So these are the books that we think are the ones that kind of like blew our mind at the time, the ones that kind of had such a huge impact on us, made us fall for the characters, the creators that that we all love. All right.
I think a lot of it is really the enjoyment that you get from when you read a book, and that almost that Christmas. You know how everybody feels at Christmas time? They like happy. That's like this book made me feel happy, and I want you to feel as happy reading it, and I want to share my joy. So
there are some also rans, as always. For me, I'm not sure about yourselves, but for me, I can't remember the numbers, but I think it's around the 240s. I might be wrong. It was The Amazing Spider-Man, No One Stops the Juggernaut. Because for me, that kind of encapsulates Peter Parker. The fact that he's got to stop the Juggernaut, which nobody ever does particularly well. From getting to Madam Web, he fails and then beats himself up about it. That's Peter Parker all over, right?
It is.
Yeah. Guys, did you have an also ran before we get into the books?
I think a lot of it is I think a lot of the stuff, the books that we've already talked about, right? So, I mean, I would love to give out Squadron Supreme, or I would love to give out Preacher or something like that, like just the introduction to the characters and stories that I think not only affected me as a young reader, but I think affected the comic industry as a whole. Like it had to change the way some of the books were written.
That's really valid point, especially for the 13th Crusaders pick. 13, how about yourself? Any also rans that kind of ran close to yours?
Oh, absolutely. There's two of them aside from the one that we're going to review today. But if it were a gift in graphic novel format, just so you get the whole story as a gift, I would do Kraven's Last Hunt for sure.
Good shout.
And then The Dark Knight Returns, because why not?
See, I thought about The Dark Knight Returns. I'm not going to lie. But I think, and we say this all the time, it's our catchphrase, it's of its time. You read it now. You read it back then, and it's absolutely so serious. Like, wow, this is really, impactful. You read it now, and it's satire. I think the tone has changed. Obviously, the book's the book, but I think our perceptions of it have changed.
I think since that book, there are so many writers and artists that have come around and have done it better. Just saying.
Well, I'll agree with Bud as far as it's been mined to death. I don't know if it's done better or not, but it's definitely been mined.
I noticed that Bud's never going to give away that Avengers book he reviewed way back when, the party book where Star Fox was in it. Like,
oh, that was my very first first Avengers comic. Yeah, it was my very first comic book that I bought with my own allowance.
Was it Avengers 246?
It was,
yeah.
Avengers
That's how much trauma I've suffered. I remember the issue.
I'm not buying anybody any Champions books, so the sorry state of our comic book collections. All right, okay. Interestingly, there's a little bit of a side note for this show. Inadvertently, we've all gone DC.
Yep.
What's that mean? Does that mean DC have the edge on creating books that affect us, and and Marvel's just all pulp and pop. Professor, what is the meaning of these things?
You say inadvertently, I say advertently. I think I think we picked DC because I think DC publishes more trade friendly books. I think.
Oh, okay.
I think you could pick up full runs of certain writers, and I don't think you see that very much on Marvel side. I mean, you could get a John Byrne omnibus or a Jack Kirby omnibus, but you can't get some of the better writers. I mean, you can go to DC and get a Grant Morrison Batman run. You can go to DC and get the Scott Snyder run. You can get my pick, which we'll get to shortly.
I actually was gifted the Neil Adams Batman omnibus, which was an extremely generous gift, but that had all the the cream of the crop Batman stories from Neil
Stand
Adams.
by. Hold on.
He's even wearing a Batman top. Oh my God. We've converted him. Yes.
We have succeeded.
No more Marvel.
Yeah, that's the exact one.
That's a beauty, that like.
Yeah, that's the exact one I was gifted.
I got this, and
signed, isn't it?
Nice.
There you go.
I got supposedly got Neil Adams' last copy.
All right. Yeah.
I don't believe that for a second, but
I love your sweater, except for with the symbol that's in it. What's in it? Is that a Patriot thing?
Patriots.
Yeah. No, we got to fix that.
Yeah. Batman wouldn't be a Patriots fan.
No, I don't think so either.
I'd be a Dolphins fan.
They didn't have the Gotham Knights shirt, so.
I've got a Gotham Knights t-shirt. Just saying. All right, let's get into it before we get derailed by more football talk. First one up, it is the Professors, and this is Doom Patrol number 19. Some stats on this one. It's from February 1989. On eBay, you can get it for anywhere between $7.99 and £55. On Go Collect, a grade 8 will cost you $20. A 9.6 will cost you $80. There you go. It's written by Grant Morrison. In fact, is this not Grant Morrison's first Doom Patrol? I think
it is.
Richard Case is on art. Carlos Garzon is on inks, and John Workman is on letters. Right, Bud. Never had you down for a Grant Morrison fan. This did surprise me when it came through. So tell us all about this.
So I'm going to tell you, Grant Morrison is very hit or miss for me. I either love it or I hate it with a red hot passion. But the Doom Patrol for me, this when I mentioned earlier about those formative books for me, and there are certain books that I have in my collection that the first time I read them, I was like, I did not think you could do that in comics. And I didn't think comics could make me think or carry these concepts or, and this book, other than the fact that the previous 18 issues of a run was a disaster, which is why they, they went with a complete and total direction for this. But reading this, and this was the very first Grant Morrison book I ever wrote, and this is I've read rather, and this is the first, I think, Grant Morrison book that he was actually did a run on. Am I right on that? Because I know that he did the Arkham Asylum book
graphic, yeah.
But
I'm not sure. To be honest, because I know he done Animal Man at some point. Was that before?
Oh, you know what? This was after Animal Man, I think. Okay. So having him on this book with largely characters I wasn't familiar with, because I was not familiar with Doom Patrol. I was familiar with this run of Doom Patrol, the first 18 issues, because John Byrne started it, I think.
All right.
And then switched to another writer. But the characters were very forgettable and proven by the fact that when this issue starts, with the exception of Robot Man, the rest of the team is gone, either dead or somewhere else. So this book starts with Robot Man as he's the only character in the book, and this is the first appearance of Crazy Jane. who, of course, everybody knows now from the TV show. And then they bring back the Negative Man, Larry Trainor, who did not have his powers until this issue when the negative being remerges himself with Larry and Larry's nurse. So this kind of gives you the idea of like where this book is going right from the get-go when they introduce Rebus, the new Negative Man character, and he's a hermaphrodite pretty much. Which, hey, have you ever seen that in DC? Probably not.
No, true.
So, just rereading this for the pod today, I was shocked at how I think forward-thinking this book is, and how I think standard it might be accepted today. But think of this book was in 1989, so having a what I think would probably boils down to a transgender character in a book in 1989 was very taboo. So I enjoyed this book for what it was, the ideas, just the total weirdness that Doom Patrol was and will become. I mean, you're just seeing the beginnings of this. And Cliff Steele was always the kind of like the trapped in that robot body, but here in this book, there was a part in this book where he was just kind of say like, I want to take a crap, and then I realized I don't have bowels, you know. And I was like, it was an interesting way to put stuff. Like, you kind of know that that's how Cliff felt, but I think Grant Morrison really kind of got it.
He painted the picture, shall we say?
Very clearly, yeah. So I love the introduction of Crazy Jane. At that point, the only character that I really would compare her to that maybe predates her is Legion.
Right?
Kind of like a schizophrenic, but with the difference of Crazy Jane is having all of them in her head at once, right? As opposed to like Legion, it kind of does like the little shifting, you know. So
maybe a little bit of Typhoid Mary in there.
A little bit, yep.
Yeah.
And the other characters in this book they introduce like later on. There's one holdover from the previous team who is pretty much written off very quickly. Not in this issue, but in the next issue, he's gone. So it's very almost back to the original team minus Rita, right?
Right.
You have Cliff, you have Larry, and then you have Niles Calder, and then now Crazy Jane takes the place of Rita. But
that's
then
Dr. Calder to you.
Dr. Niles Calder, who's a right bastard in this, just like he is in the show and in previous incarnations. So this book, to me, I would give as a gift to anybody that might be getting tired of traditional superhero comics.
Ooh, good call. Good call.
Because it's not like you can get burned out on Superman and Batman and other books. This is just, it's a horse of a different color.
Yeah.
For 100%. You read this and you're just like, I had no idea you could write superhero comics this way. And DC didn't know what to do with this book too. It was such a big seller, and they had to end up putting it on the Vertigo line, right? They were like, let's get this out of the DC.
No DCU for you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that this book was great for several years, you know, and just so everybody knows, I put my money where my mouth is.
Hold on, hang fire. Let's have a look.
This is my gift. This is the entire Grant Morrison run.
Whoa.
Doom Patrol.
Good.
Yep. Doom Patrol Omnibus. You can get that. It's great. It's a great gift.
There you go. Cool.
Thanks, bud. I can't wait to get it.
Yeah, me too. I'm just waiting for the Neil Adams book. It's cool. 13, there was some controversy around the Doom Patrol, if I remember correctly. Wasn't there a little bit of a furore between Marvel and DC? Because at one point, the Doom Patrol were kind of portrayed like DC's version of the X-Men. There are some similarities. Obviously, those kind of go out the window when Mr. Morrison gets his alternative points of view across.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Once Grant Morrison got his hands on this team, you can notice the difference immediately, and that's for sure. Like I agree with Bud, he's hit or miss for me as well. I think here you go from a Doom Patrol, a team that in the DC circles, was hanging around in the Silver Age and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
they were known, regardless of whatever crazy characters, wherever they are, villains as well. There's always that internal friction amongst themselves. They're a band of misfits, whatever you want to say. That's always been a staple for Doom Patrol. What I appreciate with this particular issue is that Grant Morrison still keeps that intact. I just think he ups it up a notch, and you can tell that with Robot Man right off the bat. And it's a pretty sad story for Robot Man's origin.
Yeah.
He is in a car crash and his brain is literally put in a metallic body. So I think Grant does a really, really good job of explaining to the readers just how deep this trauma affects Robot Man and the team for all that matters. So I wasn't too wild about the art here, but it serves its purpose. And I think that's one of the things that Doom Patrol, I felt, and I'm not saying for the entirety of Doom Patrol, but at some points it just felt like a throwaway book. You know what I mean? Like nothing
That's
was
a good
happening.
shout. Yeah, that's a good
You know
shout.
what I mean? So I felt like this here was like, to me, this would have been a great issue 1 of a new volume.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
which is what would have happened nowadays.
Correct. Yeah, this would have been an issue number 1. So Doom Patrol is just one of those things that, again, it's something that was created in the past. You don't want to just throw it away. You want to try to keep it in the game. And I think when Grant Morrison entered it, I think he kept it, he stabilized it. And then he built a stronger world around Doom Patrol. So he brought in a new character here. That's fantastic. I felt like there was a little bit of an attitude adjustment for a lot of these characters, like Robot Man just seemed more alive. How ironic is that? But yeah, this was his way of just saying, look, these guys are here to stay, and don't worry, I got it. I got their backs. And I think that's a good thing for the readers.
I have a bit of trivia question for you guys.
Go on, then.
Who created the Doom Patrol?
Oh.
What do you mean, like the actual creator?
The actual creator.
I used to know this.
I'm going to tie this into what you brought up a minute ago.
Is it? I don't know. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to go John Byrne.
No, the creator of Doom Patrol was Arnold Drake.
Okay.
And my tie-in trivia is when Stan Lee left the X-Men in 1965, who took over the writing chores?
Oh, really?
Arnold Drake, second writer on the X-Men, and he was asked to take over X-Men because of his work on Doom Patrol.
Wow. There you go. So that plays into what I was saying before about Doom Patrol being.
Way to marvelize your pick, bud.
Yeah. It just doesn't work like that.
You just had to stick it in there.
Yeah, try to.
Yeah.
I like you guys. I find Grant Morrison hit or miss. I think when he sticks to straight up clever superhero stuff, I think it works brilliantly. When he goes abstract, and he can go abstract, I find myself not on the ride as much. Some of the RIP Batman stuff was interesting, but his Doom Patrol stuff, for the majority of it, kind of as a throwaway book, that's exactly a great description. Because when Grant Morrison was on this book and then moves over to Vertigo, I mean, it's overshadowed. You've got like Sandman, Animal Man, you've got those books that are like gaining a huge amount of press. And I don't know who was, I don't know anyone at the time who was reading Doom Patrol. I think, I don't. Sorry.
That's a good call, Johnny. 1980, like the late 80s, early 90s was a very busy time. Even for some of the books that were released in the early 80s were still in the press.
Yeah.
Doom Patrol was like, who's that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, no one. None of my friends at the time were like running to the store to buy a Doom Patrol book.
Right.
That said, this time around in this issue, Grant Morrison stays within the lines. He's not creating an outsider or anything. He's just going straight for the human element rather than the extreme elements that will come into play later. And you cannot help but feel sorry for Robot Man. You know, I mean, the dude's a bit of a dick, yes, but you see his point already. You know, he's dissing the guy. I forgot his name already. It's there on the page. Yeah, Will Magnus.
Will
Magnus. He's dissing Will Magnus, and all Will did was provide him with a body. You know, he kept him alive, and then he says he's going. If I could, I'd spew in your face. It's that whole sort of like reticence that kind of comes with surviving something that you maybe should have died from, and you know what, you would have been happy if you had. Other than that, I agree the art's a little bit wonky, although that bottom panel does look like Michael Keaton. This is the start of Grant Morrison's run, so the seeds are being sown for some of the crazy stuff that's going to happen down the line. I think more than anything, the Doom Patrol is an acquired taste, and I think for it to work, you've got to be in the right frame of mind. You can't go into this thinking it's going to be all light and jolly, because it absolutely totally isn't.
No.
Yeah, but that's all right, because that's why there's 57 varieties of soup. We don't all like the same one, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I enjoyed reading this. I was intrigued. I am one of the few people who's probably not watching the TV show, so, but no, good shout. I liked how we've gone for something that's a little bit out there. So well done, Professor. Good shout.
I would also like to close by saying Grant Morrison also had a memorable run on X-Men.
He did. He did. In fact, has there been a book that he hasn't had a memorable run? No, I'm joking. There's loads. But yeah, his X-Men book started off really well and then flatlined, and just fell into the same sort of cycle that he was always bemoaning. So yeah. I suppose that's probably the issue with superhero comics more than anything. I suppose. Right, before we get to the 13th pick, it's time for one of our ads. I only have a couple of ads on this one, so time for a crisis. What a great advert. Right. We want figures of us. That's all. That'd be cool.
You know, you can do that on Hasbro. Did you know that?
Can you? Oh, let's do that. Let's get a duo box with two figures in, and then the background can be one of 13's avatars.
Or 13 of them.
We could get 13 a figure of himself, and no one will know what it looks like.
Yeah. All right. We mentioned earlier about books we give as gifts for whatever reason. One that the professor mentioned was to change the industry. And I don't think when you say something like that, you have to recognize 13th's choice as the book that did that. This is, without question, one of the comic books of all time. It is Watchmen #1. This is written by Alan Moore, art and letters by Dave Gibbons, and colors by John Higgins. It's from September '86. On eBay, you can buy this for around £45. On Go Collect, it's between $40 for a grade 8, all the way up to $170 for a 9.6. Good luck in finding one of those bad boys. Right. 13th. It's your call. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I would give this away as a gift is because if you're going to dabble into comics, or you dabbled in a little bit but looking to learn more, sooner or later you're going to run into the Watchmen. There's no doubt about that, and why it was so significant for the industry. So this book or and series in general kind of has it all. You have superheroes, you have politics, you have crime, you have internal friction with the team, kind of like Doom Patrol. You have a history kind of being restated to fit this universe. You have good art, solid art, I think, for the series, and then of course exceptional writing from Alan Moore. This to me changed the game at this time for comics, just because it made you look at the main characters in a different way. Like the internal dialogue was different. Like you get that right away the second that you're in the opening pages. You get a mystery to try to solve, and I remember when I read this for the first time, I had no idea who the hell did what. It wasn't until later on in the series I started getting more comfortable in this environment, right? Like in this issue, you learn that Vietnam became the 51st state. Nixon was president for a 5th term. And I'm like, what the hell's happening? But the vibe was definitely New York.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about that. So that was neat. And so this issue, issue 1, is mainly known for, setting up that world of Alan Moore, but also it's introducing to you several of the Watchmen characters, starting with Rorschach. You get to see the first appearance of the comedian who was part of the Minutemen at one point or another. You're going to meet whatchamacallit, Dr. Manhattan, one of my favorite characters, at least this version of him. So this book has a lot of things, and you're going to meet also the Night Owl, both of them, the original one and the second one that replaced him. And unlike other superhero books, the Watchmen was a team that was retired. Normally, you jump into like, okay, here's the first appearance, and this is their first adventure. That happened.
Yeah.
So you're jumping in, this like the post game show with the Watchmen. You know what I mean? Like this is the day in the lives of these guys after they retired, but a superhero was killed, and Rorschach, is an obsessive investigator and a conspiracy theorist, absolutely believes that someone's coming after masks, as they call them, or heroes or villains or whatever, and no one seems to care. And that's what I love about this, because each character's personality is so unique. And to blend that all together to kind of make this story happen is just absolutely, it's legendary. There's no other way to put it. So this would be my gift to somebody. Yeah, the movie is one thing. I think the movie did a okay job, but reading the book is just so much better, because it's just easy to get lost in this world that Alan Moore set forth. So, and again, this has also been mined.
Yeah, massively.
Massively. Right, exactly. I couldn't agree more. So
I think the movie simplifies the ending for a lot of people.
Correct.
But I think the tone of the movie is bang on with the trade, at least, or with the various issues. I just think the ending makes, I'm not going to say more sense, but it just makes it simple. So like the crowd going to the cinema don't have to think about it too much.
Yeah. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in each issue as you go along. Like, for instance, on the cover, it starts 12 minutes to midnight, the doomsday clock. And each issue, the doomsday clock ticks up to midnight.
Yeah.
There's things like that. Like I already mentioned Vietnam, Nixon, things like that. But again, you're going to get a taste of everything that I think at the time superhero comics just did not have.
Cool.
So
let me ask you a quick question then before we move across to the Professor. Do you feel that the lack of recognized superheroes within this book there's no Batman, there's no Superman. In
Mhm.
fact, these are repurposed Charlton comic characters. Do you feel that kind of hindered, first of all, hindered what Alan Moore was trying to do, or did it water it down? Because
I
back
think,
then, even
yeah.
the Superman, Batman, they weren't the media icons that they are now. So there, go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Just remember too, like DC, Forever and a Lifetime were known to make campy books. Then they acquired Charlton Comics,
Mm-hmm.
and now you have a whole stable of characters. And what do you do with these guys? We want to use them,
Uh-huh.
but man, what a job they did with the Watchmen.
Yeah.
That's like completely taking, the cream of the crop of Charlton Comics and saying, all right, we know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to the point where it almost felt like you forgot about Charlton Comics when you're reading this. And I think that's a superb job, taking someone like the Question from there, and then you have Rorschach.
Yep.
So you repurpose that character, but Rorschach in popularity to the Question, you know what I mean? Rorschach, I think, ran away with it for a time.
Yeah, agreed. And of course, Night Owl's Blue Beetle.
Correct. And then Captain Atom, in a way, was repurposed to become Dr. Manhattan.
Dr. Manhattan, yeah.
Right.
Cool. Excellent. Professor, what's your take on the Watchmen?
Well, you just compared all these characters to Charlton Comics characters, and I never put that together before, so thank you for that.
Always happy to help.
Yeah, well, we kept it within the same publisher. We didn't Marvelize it like you did the previous book.
Yeah.
So this is a book that I actually stayed away from for a long time.
Me too.
I didn't read it when it first came out. Which is surprising because I mean I read Squadron Supreme, which I think is Marvel's version of this that predated it. I'll say by a bit, like maybe 6 months. I think that those two books are similar in tone and did the deconstruction type design. Watchmen, of course, by far the more popular option. I liked this book, when I did end up reading it after it had been out for years. I actually don't think I read it until I bought a trade. I don't have any of the original issues on this. But it was just, to me, it was like all the characters were totally like fully realized 3-dimensional characters that I was able to kind of get behind in. Like, while I didn't like all of the characters, I do think that they all served a purpose to the story. Rorschach, I thought, was just like a psychotic, like he wasn't a good guy. I was like, he's just a very strange, weird character. And for superhero comics, the dude was weirder when he took the mask off. And I thought it was so strange. But I like Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan was the first character in comics I ever read that really felt omnipotent to me. Even more so than a Silver Surfer or a Galactus or something like that. I thought Dr. Manhattan just felt like he could snap his fingers and reality would be gone. He was kind of like the Beyonder. And then to me, and Ozymandias, I thought was a really great character, just because he felt to me almost what's the word I'm looking for? He was almost neutral. He was kind of like, I think he was a good guy. I didn't think he was a bad guy, but he was doing bad things for the
good reasons.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this book was one of the first books that actually you had to read, and then you had to go back and reread just to make sure you got the concepts right.
Yeah.
And it was this. Okay, so Watchmen does have the ability to tell me this is the first time I ever saw a comic with a big blue penis in it. So
you won't see that in this issue, though.
Yeah.
No, that's
family friendly.
Sign of things to come.
Yeah. So for me, this book, when we talk about this book, it impacted the industry for loads of different reasons. One, it brought dark and gritty to the fore. Something that people like O'Neill and Adams maybe tried with Batman in the 70s, but didn't get away with it to the extreme they maybe wanted. It also brought in like a multi-layered narrative. What I mean by that is that whilst there is an overreaching arc through all 12 parts of the book, certain issues take a step back. We get to see Rorschach's origin. We get to see the Minutemen. We get to see the original characters, how they interacted, how they fell apart, interaction between the comedian and Dr. Manhattan, all those sort of things that kind of that are intimated within the main arc. We do get to see, but it's done in a non-linear fashion. So when we now read comic books and they jump from the past, the present, the future across the way, the reason we do that is because of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like I equate it to football. We entered the game in the fourth quarter and we're going into overtime.
Yeah.
That's basically where you start.
One of the other things that this book has created, it's probably not the first book to do it, but it's the one that does it so thoroughly. It's this. The 9-panel page.
I knew you were going to say something about that.
Well, it's like the bane of modern comic books. People think the 9-panel page is like, well, to make it serious, you've got to do it in 9 panels, and sometimes it works.
Well, I think that that this book is kind of designed for that with these characters that feel very much like Silver Age type characters for the most part, and with a Silver Age design to the page. You know,
I don't have a problem with that. The 9-panel page in this book, I will never complain about a 9-panel page in The Watchmen. I will complain about it in modern day books because I think, well, you know what? Surely The Watchmen, as fantastic as it is, surely we can move past that point now. Surely
Yeah, I mean,
that
taking a design
that wasn't the pinnacle of comic books, and we've gone backwards, have we?
Yeah, taking a design or a page layout from The Watchmen is one thing, but can you make a better story? Is the challenge.
That's a different thing. The other thing that I'll also bring up, and this might attract the No Prize viewers more than anything, is The Watchmen had these text articles in the back of their books, which would then give further history and credence to what was going on. Now, maybe not to the same extent, but correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that kind of what's going on with the X books right now?
It is, but even in this text, the reason they did this was because that was even a more shout out to the old Silver Age, Golden Age books that were coming out, where in order for them to be put on the news or sold on the newsstand, they would have to have some pages of text in them. And so that's when you get some of these old Golden Age, Silver Age books. When you flip through them, you get into the little mini story in there that's like a couple of pages long. That's what that's there for. And that's why there's a second little backup story at the end with these about the ship or the boat.
The Black Pearl.
The Black Pearl. Yeah.
The Black Pearl?
That's why you get the second story in this too, because it's all harkening back to, the 60s, late 50s, early 60s.
Cool. I'm like you on this one as well. I didn't buy this the first time around. I didn't buy it the second time around or the third time. I probably picked up the graphic when the movie came out. To be honest, I bought the trade. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, loved it. I asked a question earlier about the impact of it not being regular comic book characters. I'm not going to lie, that had an impact on me. I was kind of like, you know what? I still like my Batman, I like my Superman, I like Spider-Man. I don't know who these characters are. I know they've tried to revive the Watchmen a number of times, but to me, they should just leave well alone and just let it be.
I don't want it to go unsaid either. There's controversy surrounding this with Alan Moore in DC over the years.
Yeah.
It's like, but then as a collectors like we are, would this have been a good run if you get to see the before Watchmen, not the miniseries they did later, but I'm talking about the actual adventures when they were together.
Yeah. But, I think I don't know. I think that
like the sequels that were attempted for this. It's just this is too hard to kind of top, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would. This for me, this is one and done. There's certain movies that don't get a sequel because they're one and done. Watchmen is done. DC can try and back end it into the current continuity. They can multiverse it. They can do what they like with it.
They've done the Doomsday Clock. I mean,
but no one's going to actually, top this. And that's anyone. Jeff Johns, I'm looking at you. Stop it. You're not going to top The Watchmen, no matter how many times you try. That said, the Justice Society book that's come out this week is pretty good, so you should try and read that. But that's what he's writing characters that he loves. Justice Society. Job's a good one.
Yeah, this is a tough order for any writer to say, okay, look, we want to do a 20-issue run of the Watchmen when they were young and together.
No,
it's not gonna. It's just not gonna.
It's not gonna happen. This is. It's our phrase. This is of its time. Do not touch it. This should be. Right. This should be like the bottled city of Kandor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just kept it outside of everything. Just protected forever, never to be touched again.
Yeah.
It's up there. Right. My turn.
Johnny's turn.
Bud's going to give me grief because when
I'm not going to give you grief this time.
When I think of books that I would recommend or give it a present to get people into comic books, for me, better than The Dark Knight Returns, it is Batman Year One. This is the classic from written by Frank Miller. Art by David, I can't say his name, but I'm going to go for Mazzucchelli. I'm sorry if I get it wrong. Richmond Lewis is on colors. Todd Klein is on letters. Now, I love this book. This is up there. This is my par excellence book. If anyone talks to me about Frank Miller, this is what I'm thinking of. It is a beautiful 4-part story of the origin of Batman. It's that simple. But it's done in such a way that it feels like it's a 50s comic. It's dirty. It's awful. It's grimy. It's awful, not in like a bad way, but it's like a bad city. All right? Just look at it. Just look. It looks turgid. You do not want to be in this city. The thing that put me off the first time when I looked at this book was the handwriting. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to work through that? But I'm glad I did. It follows the year. It starts at January 4 and it works all the way through. You get introduced to Jim Gordon. In fact, you could argue it's Jim Gordon's story more than it's Bruce Wayne's. You get introduced to a bunch of characters that are going to have a massive impact on Batman, both good and bad. Alfred makes his appearance. We get to see how he's not ready to move forward. We see an early Selina Kyle in action before things go a little bit pear-shaped. Things go wrong. And then we get the flashback to those famous pearls and that night out that caused so much problems for him. Where's it at? Is that it? There it is. The classic panels. And just the way it ends. The whole, he knows that he's ready. He just doesn't feel like there's something missing. And then the bat crashes through the window. And the phrase, yes, father, I shall become a bat. And you're like, wow. I am, at this point, if there was a movie, you'd be standing up going, way, because that moment's happened. From this point on, we get to see him try to be Batman. He's not the bat god that he is now. He tries, he fails, he gets better. He makes bonds a relationship with Jim Gordon. But for me, no matter, same like the Watchmen and Jeff Johns, whomever tries to out year one, I'm looking at you, Scott Snyder, year 0, wasn't it? You just don't bother, because this book is just the best origin of Batman at its most basic level for me. There we go. Cool. Professor.
It's tough to argue with you on this. Now, I would tell you, see, this is why I'm not going to get on you for picking a Batman book, because if you were to give out a gift, I would expect you to give Batman. So, that's why. But if we could go back to the very first page past the cover, is this the first spot where credit is given where credit is due, where it says adapted from the works of Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and Jerry Robinson.
I do not know.
Usually it just says Bob Kane there.
Yeah.
So I think that might be, people would have probably read that and said, "Who the hell is Bill Finger?" Or "Who
And
the hell
also,
is Jerry Robinson?"
no,
So, I think that was that might have been news to a lot of people back in when did this come out? 1986.
yeah. So this is 86.
Okay.
You can get it for eBay at 7.5. It costs you £65. Go collect. It costs you anywhere from $65 to $120.
Well,
So it's a book that's got legs.
yeah, and you can look and see that how many properties have come out of this. This was very reminiscent of the whole Gotham show on Fox from several years ago, right?
Agreed.
Where it was kind of focused on Gordon and had other characters like Commissioner Loeb, Selena Kyle, all of those characters. The only difference between in Gotham de-aged Bruce to be a 12-year-old. So
And Catwoman
yeah,
to an extent, yeah.
but the rest of this book, it's very, very grim, very gritty,
Yeah.
exactly what you'd expect. And it's really, this is like the quintessential Batman story that doesn't have Batman in it.
Yeah, and I mean this scene with Gordon and Flash, it's practically tone for tone used in Batman Begins.
Yep.
So, just the whole.
Gordon even does look like Gary Oldman a little bit in this.
Yeah, agreed. No, but for me, at this point when I picked this up, I hadn't heard of David Mazzucchelli, so I hadn't heard of him being on Daredevil at all. But you're a Daredevil fan, so how does the art here from Mazzucchelli differ from the art that you see in Daredevil?
It doesn't. It's the same artwork.
Exactly the same. Cool.
It's exactly the same with the shading and everything. It's I even down to the lettering. I think it's just the whole entire creative team from Daredevil came over and did Batman Year One, much as what's been going on right now with Chip Zdarsky doing Daredevil and Batman at the same time. So it's very similar in tone, and this is a superhero comic without the tights. So
yeah, cool. But although there are no fishnets, they are leather pants, though. So cool. 13. Your take on this?
I agree with a lot of the points you made. This to me is the definitive Batman origin story, period. That's it. If you want to learn what made Batman tick, why he did things, we all know the death of his parents and whatnot. But there's a lot of things in between that moment to until when he was a young adult that we didn't know. So this is kind of a fill in the blank. And I think that's exactly what these guys set out to do. And from the opening scene, you already know that it's a city, it's a corrupt city, it's dirty, it's dark, nowhere where you want to be. I read this as a kid, and I grew up in New York City, and in reading like the first couple of panels, like seeing the train like that, dark, people always just moving along, busy, it just had that New York feel to it. The thing that I noticed from here was the corruption of Gotham was thorough. It wasn't just your basic purse snatcher. This went all the way up to the top in even within the government of Gotham City, as you'll learn later on. But Bruce, he even says it himself. He was handed a lot of things, the wealth and the butler that with combat training, like he had all the things set up for him. And he even went through extensive training, but he was just missing one piece, was how to gain the edge over the criminal underworld of Gotham. And we'll learn that later on. So with Jim Gordon as well, it's a day in the life of Jim Gordon the second he gets off the plane from Chicago into Gotham City. So I agree with you, Johnny. This is definitely an origin, not just for Batman, but also for Jim Gordon and how he rose to become eventually the commissioner of Gotham. It's a staple for Gordon. He did not want to be a crooked cop. He didn't want to get down with the corruption, and he stood up to it. So it's funny how, as you go through the story for each of them, Bruce Wayne comes back and he wants to go out there. He puts on a disguise or creates a disguise, and in that battle that he had in Gotham, as you'll see in the pages here, he was stabbed and he was hurt. And on his way
Mhm.
driving back to the manor, he actually crossed paths with Jim Gordon. They didn't
Seen
meet,
that.
but at that
Yeah.
point, that's when you're like, these two guys are destined to meet. Uh, yeah, exactly. Sooner or later, they're going to meet. And you can tell with the way the internal dialogue was going and whatnot. So
Mhm.
this book to me is just one of those things like, and hopefully you agree with me, Johnny. I've read like a million Batman origin stories. None of them do it justice like what Frank Miller and friends did here. None of them.
Well, you got to. We talked about how Watchmen. I agree with you. We can say how Watchmen affected the comic book industry, and
Yep.
that's an absolute, and that's true. Absolutely, totally did. But the impact of year one was that a whole new Batman series was created based on the popularity of this book,
Hmm.
and that's Legends of the Dark Knight, which was the first new Batman series since 1939, 1940, when did Batman #1 hit. So everyone was fascinated with a younger Batman, how he got to where he wanted to be. And though Legend of the Dark Knight would flesh out certain aspects, the creation of the Batmobile, for example, Venom was in there. So you kind of, that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this book.
Hmm.
It hadn't been done so well. I love the colors. I love how it's one color taking the whole panel. Yes, we get to see the Waynes get shot again. Yeah, I get it. People get sick of it, but tough, deal with it. But for me, I agree with you. Whole 110% on this one. This is purely just the best Batman origin.
You couldn't give me
How many
113%, could you?
how many year
Go on,
ones came out of this? All the they gave all the other characters year ones as well. Once
yeah,
Batman.
Right.
yeah. In fact,
Even
I think they went as far as year 3 with Batman. Year
Yep.
2 was the Reaper storyline,
Hmm.
Detective Comics with Todd McFarlane and Alan Davis on art, which led to Phantasm, which was used in the cartoon show. And then year 3 was Pat Broderick, I believe, and it was the introduction of Robin.
Hmm.
And that, there you go. Cool.
They even had year one annuals. Like they've tried this
Yeah.
method of retelling origins using the year one title
Mhm.
throughout a lot of other books and characters. I mean,
Mhm.
but none of them top this one. You can't top it.
Yeah. It's a way to update. I think update your characters for the maybe the decade you're writing for.
Mm.
Well, it just goes to show. I mean, this show's all about all the comic books, and yet you could argue that all three that we've talked about today had impacted the industry and still continue to impact the industry. You've talked about Doom Patrol. It might be blasé to write a transgender character now, but if it wasn't for Doom Patrol bringing it up back in the late 80s, would we have got round to it?
Hmm.
Yeah. You can talk about, layered stories, 12 maxi series, um, shifting timelines, nine panel pages from the Watchmen. Those still happen. Look at anything written by Tom King. And then year one, which created a whole new comic book run, and as 13th mentioned, brought into the whole fascination of how our favorite characters became our favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
So three great books, 3 books that should, if you were giving them at Christmas, get you into comic books. Definitely.
I don't think they're that expensive if you really think about it. The cool thing is with the Watchmen, if you create a monster out of somebody that wants to become a creator, you only have 11 other issues to go. It's not impossible to put together. It's fairly self-contained.
The Batman is 4, 4, 5, 6, and
And
7.
7. Yeah.
That's it. Just 4 issues. 4
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's available in trade.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. I see them at cons all the time. For the most part, they're fairly priced. At least 404 is.
Yeah,
That to me, that's obviously the start of the little run. But definitely want to get your hands on those.
definitely go for it. All right, there you go. 3 up, 3 down. If you've been good, get them on your Christmas list. You never know. Santa does watch the pod. Doesn't really, but, you never know. Professor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Johnny. It was always a pleasure.
Indeed. 13th, thank you for your time as well, sir.
Of course, I can't wait to receive my gifts.
Sorry, mate. I checked the list. You've been on the naughty list.
No surprise for the 13th year in a row.
Yeah. 13 lumps of cola coming your way. Although with a fuel crisis, that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, thanks. I'll take that over the books.
Yeah. I'd rather burn coal than comics.
I'm going to be extra naughty so I could get coal.
All right. Don't forget to check out the UCPM for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, all about the Marvel Comics universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney Plus, and we do talk comics too.
Yeah, some comics in there. And of course, you've got the Definitive Crusade to keep up to date with all the DC happenings and shenanigans. Just note that all the books today were also all DC. Just saying. No one wants to give you a Marvel book.
Hey, maybe next time we'll do all Marvel books.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do that for New Year show, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys. It's been a blast. I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. It's time to go and watch some football. So for now, adios.